77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts, including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
The Rev and the Rabbi.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Rev, as I mentioned to you earlier, we have a guest on who is communication specialist, political strategist, political analyst, a rabbi, the CEO of Sheinkopf Communications, and we have none other than, of course, Hank Sheinkopf. Always a pleasure having you, and I really cherish our friendship, Hank, because I know when I have a political question, I can turn to you. And you remind me years ago, before my time, Harry Truman, get up to speak, and people would yell, "Give him hell, Harry." And what did he say? "I never give him hell. I tell the truth, but they think it's hell." And that's you, Hank. You're always telling the truth. All right, Hank, question number one. How is it possible that someone who espouses the views of Zohran Mamdani vis-a-vis Israel,
Okay.
right? How is it possible someone who has those views could be victorious in the Democratic primary in a city that has some 1 million Jews? And not to mention all the economic policies, but that one alone. Hank?
Well, first, thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, Reverend, for having me on today. It's a very important question because it doesn't speak just about New York; it speaks about the nation. So, how could win? They ran a brilliant campaign. Andrew Cuomo ran a lousy campaign. Brad Lander ran a stupid campaign. The ads were idiotic. And what happened is that Mamdani, which I predicted, 7 months ago, I said Mamdani was the guy to watch. I said it, and people came back and said, "You didn't know what you're talking about." I said, "Watch." But they ran a brilliant campaign. The campaign I would have run for him, which is in politics, we target people, right? So we look at a voter file, which is a listing of voters and their voter history. And we look at people generally who are what we call 3 out of 4s. They voted in 3 of the last 4 elections, or 4 out of 4s who voted in 4 of the last 4 elections. But what the Mamdani gang did is they found people who voted in 0 out of the last 4, 1 out of the last 4, 2 out of the last 4. And the end result is they had a universe that worked very well. He also ran a campaign that was in the 21st century, which I thought was terrific. They used the ads were very good. They were in the form of almost texts, TEXTS. The mail looked like overstated graphics, which are very common in the hip hop era and previously. And I think that they were very. And the message was very clear: 1, 2, 3, 10 seconds, and out. There's nothing complicated about it. And the youth of today really are brainless. They've never paid a price, never borne a burden, never had a tough day. This generation that voted for him has eaten more regularly than any generation in the history of mankind. They've been housed, although it may be more expensive, more frequently and more seriously than any other generation in the history of mankind. They make more money. They are professionals. They're educated. And the Jews particularly have substituted God's name for the names Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and Cornell in the belief that somehow if they do that, they will be accepted. When in fact, it is a delusional argument. And I think Tom Segev, the Israeli author, wrote the book about Jews in Germany, how they deluded themselves until the very end. And that's what's going to happen here. Some relative portion. So one last thing. I just had a discussion with someone in the gym who's much smarter than I am. We said, "Well, what do you think about Jews from Mamdani?" I said, "Well, I don't want to tell you what I would do to them before they do it to my family or to me. But this idea that somehow," I said to him, "you don't understand what globalized the Intifada means. Intifada means blowing up buses with suicide bombers with innocent people on them so that body parts go splashing onto a street. Intifada means killing innocent Jews in Buenos Aires because you decided that the Iranians have a good idea. It means murdering people throughout the world. So what are you talking about?" So any Jew that finds himself in that position, rabbinically, it would be good to get a quarter 3 rabbis together and have a chayrim, excommunication temporarily. But they don't go to synagogue, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Rev?
So you're associating that with Mamdani. Why? What is it something he said? Something in his past? You're associating this? Explain to our audience. Yeah.
Well, he said it. He said, globalized via Father. He's been a vocal opponent of Israel. And biblically, it's hard to hate Israel and not hate Jews. It just doesn't go together. People can delude themselves, but from a biblical perspective, it doesn't work that way. He said globalized via Father. I didn't say it. He's been an opponent of Israel. He has been vociferous about it. He comes from a family. His father is a Jew hater, an Israel hater, who's said frankly that the Jews have no place in the Middle East, certainly not in a Jewish state or a community. His mother was a very well-regarded filmmaker, and bless her for her success. I am told tried to stop Gail Gadot, who a fine actress, from appearing on the stage of the Academy Awards, and I would guess they did it not because she was wearing a blue dress, but she's a Jewess. So when you have people like that, and I was not a chemistry major in college. I'm BA, MA, MPhil, PhD as a former high school dropout. So my view is a very simple one. I know the difference, although I did not attend chemistry classes, between water and other substances. And when someone is drinking water, it's one thing. But when they have acid in the glass, I know the difference. And people should really pay attention to what people say, because they generally tend to mean it.
What percentage of the people you think voted with Israel at the top of the agenda of the Jewish community?
I think that what's happened is that this generation of younger people who are alienated from religion, who are also absolutely unengaged in communal activities. I mean, there's a reason why Masons are dying, Kiwanis are dying, Lions are dying, Elks are dying, service organizations, Rotarians that do simple things like run burn centers, run hospitals, contribute significant amounts of charity. This generation is not doing any of that. These young people that voted for Mamdani, they expect to be taken care of. So I don't think they have any sense of relationship to what society requires and are entirely self-engaged. And Mamdani represents that very same breed of thinking, which is, how do I make my rent cheaper? Yeah.
But how? I mean, a city as diverse as New York City, how can an extreme successfully gain the cooperation of all of the diverse community that we have here?
Well, it's a good question, Rev. I mean, it's happening because the Democratic Party is not a party. Now, here you have a guy who's not a Democrat, he's a socialist, who's commandeered the Democratic Party for his own use, who has had the gall to stand up and say that one state, his people are saying this, but he may not have said it, but his people are. The gall to say that they're going to take power, and then they're going to go out and get the Democrats in the Congress, and they're going to go get the non-progressives in Albany and take them out of office. It's a generational argument. What they mean is that Hakeem Jeffries is going to go, who is likely to be the first African-American speaker of the United States House of Representatives. It means that they will take out a guy like Carl Hastie, who's a black speaker, a black man who happens to be the Speaker of the State Assembly. Andrew Stewart Cousins, a black woman who happens to be the Majority Leader of the State Assembly. And on and on and on and on. This idea that somehow you can have a partial revolution is idiotic. And anybody who knows history knows that Leninists, for example, killed everybody, but Stalin made sure they were all dead. Why? Because the revolution goes on, and it takes time to work itself out. This is a revolution and a takeover of the Democratic Party that has been spurred along by Bernie Sanders and by AOC. And if what's her name of the Cook Political Report was on PBS a couple weeks ago, Amy Walter. And she said that the candidate of the young people who are now taking over the Democratic Party in revolt and trying to remove people who are older, upsetting a seniority system that's tend to work pretty significantly with stability in the Congress for a couple hundred years now. But anyway, that their candidate was not Kamala Harris. Their candidate was Bernie Sanders. What that represents is a continuation of that generation's brain, which is, $9 lattes are fine and $100 meals are fine, and let's not give charity, but we'll blame everybody else for our condition.
What are the young people missing by the title Democratic Socialism? What are they missing? Is it simply a disguise for socialism because they attach the term Democrat to it, or democratic socialist? What are these young people missing?
I don't think.
What are they not seeing?
It's an important question you raise. I don't think they're thinking about it. I think they're just voting, and the The moral argument that made American politics what it is was about ensuring that people who work for a living had opportunity and that they had the possibility of realizing what the Founding Fathers tried in their best fashion to do despite their protection of slavery and states' rights at the time, without which there would have been no United States. So you have these young people who are highly educated but not educated, who are making more money than anybody, who see that and have contributed nothing to society. I mean, they've borne no burden and paid no price. That's very important to know. Whereas the generations that preceded them paid a price, bore a burden, understood the nature of democracy as being something that you had to work at. They have taken this democratic socialist idea and put it together, and people don't understand what the DSA is. Democratic Socialist America. It's a marriage of DSOC, which is the Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee of Michael Harrington, who was not an anti-Semite, certainly by any measure, and SDS, the Students for Democratic Society, put together. And the end result is this bifurcated thing whose main plank is, so where you start off is hating the state of Israel and demanding that people engage in boycott, divestment, and sanctions, which Brad Lander, who was a self-loathing Jew, he was one of Mamdani's major importance, who I think will want to be the supporters and was likely to want to be the deputy mayor, and it was a crappy controller. You look at the number of audits that he didn't do, the pension management that he did, which was lousy in comparison to what other pension systems got over the time, who has been nothing more than a political hack, and frankly, has been a lifelong, as I can tell, or at least as long as I can tell, which is at least in public life, a supporter of boycott, divestment, and sanctions in the state of Israel. Did not renew purchases. He's the first controller since I don't know when who refused to purchase Israel securities. I mean, and who really hates the public. This is a guy that in the city council cut the number of school safety agents we have. Now, we had seizure of close to 7,000 weapons in New York City schools last year. What's wrong with him?
Yeah,
but it's that idea that somehow we don't have to protect people. We have to protect an idea. That's what the SA stands for.
Hank, we're going to take a break, gentlemen. All right,
we got to come back to that.
You know what I like about Hank? You know, sometimes he'll say to you, "What do you really think?" Nobody ever asks Hank, "What do you really think?" Because he tells you exactly what he really thinks. All right, stay tuned. We're going to come back with more of Hank Sheinkopf, WABC, the Rev and the Rabbi. Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joe Spatasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
And we are talking with the well-known, well-respected Hank Sheinkopf, political analyst, strategist, communications, genius, and a rabbi as well. Hank, I was walking down the street the other day, and a woman stopped me from the former Soviet Union. And she said to me, nothing to do with Israel. She said, listen, I'm a proud Jew, but we got to vote against Mamdani for another reason. I come from a country that was destroyed because of socialism. We can't allow socialism to be pervasive anywhere in this country. So, Hank, what do we do? People say it's too late, nothing can be done, or is it something that should be done?
Oh, wait. Before you do that, explain it. Because socialism, especially this generation, they see it only as an economic system, but it's more than that. All right? It's a theory that has not been proven. Hank, please speak to that.
Well, it is not. It's not a proven theory. I understand the desire to do good, and part of what's motivating this kind of, interesting set of dynamics these young people have put together is that they have to do good, and Israel is bad, for example. Therefore, they have to attack Israel. Good means providing some kind of good, societal good, but they're not really paying attention. If they were paying attention, and if the adults running the country are paying attention, they would understand that this tax system is faulty, that it needs reform, not what was just done, but that it ensures that we'll have more chaos and more people screaming about socialism because we're not allowing people into the middle class in the ways we used to. With the death of labor unions, we're making it even more tough for people to get in the middle class because a fair system has a redistribution of wealth through a tax system that makes it easier for people to live with services that matter and that are sufficiently comprehensive. What socialism does is it takes that to the extreme. It says everybody is equal except for the people running the place. And we will give everybody their equal portion. And these kids are saying they want to run the place, but they're not going to give everybody at the bottom what they deserve, because that's not how they function.
So what's the strategy to counter this kind of mentality and what's happening now in this election period?
I think we've lost a generation, because I think, Charlie Rangel, may he rest in peace, said that drafting people wouldn't be a bad idea to get them into public service. I think we ought to have mandatory public service. I mean, my brothers and I was a policeman, which is fairly well known. My brother George is a police officer who's also served in the United States Army. My brother Elliot served in the Israeli Army as a paratrooper and was in wartime. The reality is, if you don't serve, you don't have an investment. If you don't want to serve in the Army, fine. Vista, some kind of service that requires a commitment. So we have a generation that has benefited from those boys, the 9,000 of them that gave their lives and are lying in a place called right off Omaha Beach. We're benefiting from them, and this generation that has done nothing even close and been challenged in no way, but is demonized, has found demons to attack so they can protect their own lifestyle and their own thinking. It's pretty tragic.
Wow. So, Hank, I talked to you earlier about unions. And it seems unions have taken on a different kind of reputation than they had years ago. Just saw the endorsement, as you did, of the UFT, of Mamdani. Talk about the unions today as opposed to the unions of yesterday.
Well, I've worked for unions in my career. I mean, the first client I had when I went into business was the first retainer client was Barry Feinstein, who was then the president of Local 237 Teamsters, with which I've been associated for most of the last, unfortunately for me, 40 years. I wish it was less, but then I was out for 13 years during changes in leadership. But the labor movement brought people into the middle class, created the 5-day work week, gave us the weekends, gave us really a pension system that functioned, and forced employers to do what was right. What's happened is we have less people who are in collective bargaining situations. And we also have, I have to say on behalf of the UFT and the other unions that bargain collectively with the city of New York, that they look and they view and they say, well, wait a second, it's a pragmatic decision. Democrats tend to win New York City elections. Therefore, Mamdani will tend to win. We have to face him at the table, bargaining table, and negotiations will start next year, 2026 for 2027 contracts. We better get on board now. So I understand what they're doing. But the hatred that expressed by the National Education Association in its removal of ADL, which I'm not a big fan of, by the way, as an education tool, is pretty significant because it tells you, because I cited Israel as the reason, it tells you where the country's going, that we are going to demonize people or particular entities because we can, because we don't look into ourselves. And we don't look into ourselves because religion is in trouble in this country. Yes, evangelicals are doing fine, but 70% intermarriage rate for Jews, and people calling themselves rabbis talking about siding with people who want to kill Jews, because when you say global intifada, you're not talking about buying Jews lunch. You're talking about blowing up buses, killing Jews, which is what happened during the Intifada. This is not a joke. So allowing support for that kind of thinking is ultimately dangerous and will result, frankly, in the destruction of those who permit it. And that's why the unions are going to have some problems internally.
Rabbi, I think we have a little bit of time left yet that we can talk about the Johnson Amendment.
We do. We have about 5 minutes left.
I'm curious to hear what Hank has to say.
By the way, Hank, before we get to that, can I ask you this? As one Jew to another, looking at the trajectory, people are asking, is there a future for me as a Jew in New York City?
Jewish New York, which gave the world the most extraordinary things, is over. We've already seen an out movement. We used to be 2 million here. We're under 1 million now. It is a time of change. There will be, whether Mamdani wins or loses, it doesn't matter. The city's going to change. Why? Because he got within shot. And that's the difference. And people will look and they'll say, wait a second, black middle-class people are leaving. If you're a police officer, for example, which is the entry point for many African Americans into the middle class, and 20 years come and your wife is a police officer, your husband is a police officer, you pick up your pensions, you have health care paid for until you're 65 when Medicare kicks in, you sell your house that you bought in Ardsley Park for $100,000, for $700,000 or $600,000, You take the cash, you take your passions, and say, what am I doing here? Because they're afraid of what New York City could become, and they don't want to live it anymore. Our time is over here. I mean, the era of Bill Paley, David Sarnoff, people who started television, people who took Marconi's great gift of radio and took the risk of starting networks, who took the risk of starting, in many ways, were pioneers of the recording industry. The things that made New York, right, are gone. It's over. Yeah. Our time has passed.
Wow.
That sounds like a death sentence, Rabbi. I'm hoping that maybe there's still hope here for New York City.
Well, New York City's going to go through a fiscal problem, no matter who the mayor is, because you can't have the exodus of people and have the tax base remain intact. Our needs are extraordinary, but I said it in the Wall Street Journal interview last week. It's very simple. I believe still that New York is the great hope for this country. As a New York nationalist, we had free education, with which I benefited, and thousands of people benefited, and turned this country into the most extraordinary place. As New York goes, so goes the nation. And if New York fails as an idea, where opportunity exists, where people can find each other, even if they don't disagree, even if they don't agree on anything.
We got 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left. All right, Rev.
And that's why so many people are watching New York City politics. If Mamdani wins, it's sending a message to the entire nation. You're right. It's not confined to New York City.
I worry about this country, which I love, because it gave people like me. I mean, it was a kid out of South Bronx, and I was dropped. I was 16. I had no place to live. 15, no place to live, no money in my pocket, no home on my head. It allowed me to become me. What's the future going to look like with a generation that doesn't understand what it means for me to become me, or you to become you, or someone else to have that opportunity? Because they're self-engaged. They're not really thinking about how you feed people in soup kitchens, how you ensure that churches function, how you ensure that nonprofit institutions can provide services. Yet thinking about themselves, and that's why Mamdani is dangerous.
Yeah, we've come to the end of the program. Rev, I listened to Hank, and now I know I have to move in with you. What's the sense? I'm moving into your house.
There's got to be hope, Hank.
All right.
I'm going to pray, and I'm going to pray for hope, and I hope everybody else does.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Thank you so much. Hank Sheinkopf, always, you're a very interesting person with a lot of insights and a lot of intelligence, and we are just very fortunate to know you. Thank you.
Well,
thank you for being on the program. And thank you, our listeners, for joining in to this episode of The Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Network. Till next time, stay well, stay safe. God bless.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.